Jeremy Stanford is best known for his portrayal of Buddy in the Buddy Holly story, a role which launched him from the more traditional theatre into that of the musical stage. 1999, Jeremy headed back to the VCA School of Film and Television, at that stage pursuing a new role, and that of director and writer. His first book, Year of the Queen, was about his role, the rocky rider was, and the journey of the making of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. This week, Jeremy has launched his latest novel. It's called Rapture. He's on the line right now. Jeremy, nice to have you with us.
Thank you. How are you?
Doing well. Congratulations. What a book.
Oh, thank you. We had a launch of it last night, which was wonderful at Readings in St Kilda. A whole bunch of people showed up and we had a bit of a reading from the book, and Brian Nankervis was hosting, and it was so great. We had a ball.
Brian's great, isn't he? He's a great MC.
He is the master. And one great thing about when Brian's hosting, you sort of feel like you're in good hands. And so the event just tends to just sail through, and that's what happened last night. Good fun.
I opened the book up, and I haven't read it all yet. I've got to, but on starting it, it's one of those novels you can't put down.
Great to hear.
You get me intrigued, and I dare say the audience, if they go out and buy this book, they're going to feel the same way too. I was totally intrigued into where this was going to lead me to, and at the end of chapter 1, you have this baby that's being born with a halo, and I thought, here we go. So all that first chapter came into meaning quite a bit there. How did the book and how did the feelings for this come around?
Well, there's a lot of stories about the origins of this book. I had a media company for a while, and I was developing film and television projects. And I was looking for an idea for a TV series. And at the time, this is 2013, there was a lot of family dramas on air at the time. And so I was trying to think of a family drama idea that I could pitch to the TV networks that had a point of difference. And I was lying in bed just thinking about family drama ideas, and it popped into my head, well, what if an atheist couple had a baby that was the new Messiah?
Yeah.
That would be a point of difference.
My word.
And the story just unpacked from there, and I started to fall in love with it. And not long after, the company that I had went belly up, and I went back into the theatre again, and I started to do production of South Pacific with the opera company, and that was a 3-hour show, and I had 2 hours of it backstage. And so I'd take my laptop in and I just write. And as the story unfolded, I just let it take me where it took me. And I knew there was the big plot points that I wanted to hit, but getting between one and the other was the trick. So slowly as the show went on, I started to write my first draft of the book. And by the end of the season, I had a first draft that I could go back and think, wow, that's not so good. Let's start that again. And the whole book took me about 5 years. And finally, I got myself a publishing deal, and it launched last night.
And there it is. Yeah.
Out there to buy.
Yeah, Rapture. Yeah. I'm not going to ask you how it ends because I want to read that myself. Unless you want to tell me, but I don't want to spoil it. No spoilers. I want to read that. But opening up there and just seeing how you're handling all of this and the characters, it's just brilliant writing. It really is. Did all this writing start for you after you went back to the VCA and did the writing course?
Pretty much. I had started to get a taste for screenwriting before I went to the VCA, and I just had a lot of ideas for story. And I don't know. I guess being an actor, you're a storyteller anyway. I did start doing some directing work as well, but I don't know. As an entertainer, you're always telling stories of some sort, and so there's not that much difference. You just write them down instead of performing them. And the biggest difference, I think, is that writing can be quite a lonely experience because you have to do it by yourself, and you have this idea of what your audience is going to think of it, which is why it's music to my ears, Lee, to hear you say that you're enjoying it, because the last thing I ever want to be is not entertaining. I myself hate reading books that are hard work.
Look, I'm with you. I'm like that. I'll start a book and I'll put it down. If I don't enjoy it, it's gone.
That's right. That's right. And even the best authors, will write something. And I've struggled with, some books from my favourite authors.
Yes.
I'll not get through it. But with Rapture, I wanted to make sure that it was a page turner, and because there's so much possibility in that story of a child, the new Messiah coming to the world, and I wanted to really explore that idea of what would really happen if this happened. How would the religions, the church, respond? How would the family respond? What would their friends think? What would happen? And so it's quite. I mean, you'll probably attest to this. It's quite realistic. It's not into a fantasy sort of realm as a book. It's set quite in our time.
You make it believable.
Yeah. Well, that was the idea, was to try and make the story a believable story, and I guess an exploration of what would happen if there was a second coming and it was born here in Melbourne.
Jeremy, I'm a little bit like you, and I was saying earlier with the first chapter of yours, it captures you. If I get a book and I'm not getting into it in that first chapter, I've lost it, or it's lost me. So you've got to be able to capture your audience in those first few pages, and you've done that successfully.
Oh, thank you very much. It's kind of you to say. I hope that's the experience that everyone has with it. It was certainly my intention, was to grab people by the scruff of the neck and entertain them.
Well, you say it took you 5 years to write, but it saved you a fare over to the South Pacific. You were sitting in the theatre in South Pacific, and it saved you that airfare, didn't it?
It certainly did.
This is your third book.
It's my second book.
Second book? The one, Priscilla, was the first one.
Correct. I wrote Year of the Queen, which I was asked to do the original workshops of the Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the musical.
Yeah.
And that was a story in itself. But then when it came to doing the show, I landed the role of Tick, which is the Hugo Weaving part. And the show, it was an incredible roller coaster. And because it was such a story, I started to diarise my time doing the show. And by the end of the first year, I had a book. And so I started to hunt around for a publisher, and there was quite a few interested. But at that point, nobody really believed that the show was going to be as successful as it was.
I've heard people say that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't get a deal for that, so I ended up publishing it myself. But, however, the publisher, Tale Publishing, who has put my book Rapture out, they said to me quietly last year, would you like to, because Priscilla's coming back, would you like to put the book out again? And I said, sure. So they re-released it in January to coincide with the launch of the show. So that's back in shops too at the moment. So I feel quite privileged at the moment because I have two books in the store at the same time, and I never really saw that coming.
Where does that leave your acting now? Are you going back into acting, or what's around the corner?
Oh, look, I never really left it. I'm now in my 50s, and
You're a young chap.
Look, to be perfectly honest, the roles thin out as you get to your 50s in the theatre and in TV. And I've found of the last few years that, I used to play leading man roles, and there's younger guys that do that for me now. Well, not for me, but for everyone else. So I find that I have to find different ways of employing myself, and so I'm doing a lot more directing these days, and of course a lot more writing. I'm writing my next book at the moment, and
which is called what?
It's called The Creature Within. It's a young adult fiction book, fantasy thriller, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through it at the moment, of the first draft. So that's probably going to take me another few years to finish, but I'm really loving the writing. So, yes, I do all sorts of things these days, and acting is still one of them, and when I get offered a job, I do it.
My audience will certainly remember you, I think, on Dr. Blake. We've seen you on Winners and Losers, Blue Healers, Stingers has been there, Neighbours, of course, and A Country Practice over the years.
Oh, I know. Look, I look back at my CV and all of the TV that I've done, and each one has got its own little story, and Look, I feel really privileged to be in this business because looking back over it, there's been some fantastic shows on telly, and I've been privileged to be part of a lot of them. I did a show about 10 years ago now called The Silver Sun, which was a kids' TV drama, and it was set on a spaceship. And it was a really great show. It rated really well with the kids at the time, and we only got one season out of it, but I went straight off and did Priscilla once that show had wrapped. And then all these years later, 10 years later, I started to direct again, and I went into the Ballarat Performing Arts Academy and directed a musical called Into the Woods.
Yep.
And all the kids that used to watch me on that TV show had all grown up, and they were all, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And when I walked in to the first day of directing the show, it was like the biggest, it was like Hugh Jackman had walked in the door because these kids had grown up with the show that I was in. Yeah, of course. And they loved it so much, and it was part of their youth, And so here was, the commander of the spaceship coming in to direct them in their show. And it was so sweet, and it was just hysterical. And it was such a treat for me because all these years later, I was still remembered as that character. And
what a great story. Yeah, lovely story, mate. Really, really is. The book, Rapture, it's out now to all good booksellers. So go and have a look for this one. I can fully recommend it to you. A great guy, a great author, and he writes so, so well, Jeremy Stanford. Jeremy, nice to talk to you today, pal. I wish you well with this and your next one too, and the one after that again. So are you going to do one on old folk? I'm 71. What about one on old folk?
When I had my film company, I actually pitched to the ABC an interview program with performers that were in their senior years.
Right.
To talk to them about what the business was like when they were young.
Yeah.
I spoke to Val Gillet and I spoke to Bob Hornery, and there was a whole bunch of people, and I made a little TV pilot for it, but I couldn't sell it. Oh. And I still to this day can't understand, because it was so interesting hearing these people tell their stories about when they were young in the theatre in Melbourne and Australia, and going to England, and all those beautiful theatre stories will be lost to us when they go.
Jeremy, I hope you get that up and going one day, because that would be quite good to see something like that.
I'd watch it.
I would too. Yeah. We'd sit there with a wine each. We'll come down to each other's house, have a wine, and sit there and watch it. It'll be great. Mate, thank you very, very much, pal. Rapture's the book, and the author, Jeremy Stanford. Great to talk to you.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.